Hi, I'm Susan Fisher, and this is Morten Nygård, my friend.
Hello.
From Norway, and we are going to do have a conversation about how Nine Energies developed and what the path.
We're going to have a conversation about how you have developed and how you guys have developed this work. This amazing work that you're doing.
Okay, excellent.
One of the things that we're going to work with today is that we need to get into the details about what you see, what other people don't see. So we really have to dig into it.
I have to activate my three.
You have to like
get detailed. Awesome.
I want to hear the details. I think it's important for people.
Yes.
I think you guys see so much, understand so much, and think there is a gap between what other people see and what you see. And we need to fill that gap by understanding, and let's do that today.
All right.
Okay. You are Susan Fisher.
Yes, Susan Bennett Fisher.
Bennett Fisher.
It's my full name.
That's your full name.
Decided to use it more actively. So, as Susan Bennett Fisher, I created that identity for myself as I went through this work.
Oh.
That it was something that I married my husband Morten, and I wanted to take his name.
When did you marry him?
In 2008.
Oh.
October 2008.
Why did you marry him?
I actually manifested him. I sat down with my three friend Anita, and she asked me questions, just the way you do. The three has this amazing ability to help us to accelerate manifestation. So she asked me what exactly I was looking for, what kind of guy, just every kind of question.
Interesting.
And I described Morten, as it turns out. I even asked for a natural energy 5 with a worldview, worldly, who would understand, that would not reject what I was doing with this work because it was so important to me, that would be able to be with me and my 3 daughters.
Oh.
You know, join the girls, which not an easy thing to do when kids are, I guess they must have been 10, 12, and 14 when Morten shows back up.
But since I'm asking detailed questions, so you manifested it, but what was it about him?
Martin is my soulmate. We met first 2 weeks after I married.
Super nice to see.
I married somebody. It was a huge mistake, but I needed my children, so
You got your ship.
I got my children.
Okay.
But Morten showed up at about that same time, and we created this deep friendship.
Okay.
And then we lost track of each other for 13 years.
Really?
Completely lost track. And
this is before 2008.
It's before I found out my natural energy. It's before everything.
So you have seen him before. So you have been in your
we were
system.
friends. We were friends. And then he turned back up in 2007.
How was the first kiss?
That was very nice.
Very nice.
Yes.
So you understand, listeners, it's going to be a detailed question podcast. See, it was nice.
Yeah, he connected with me through that.
So
yeah. He's a physical being. As much as Morten is a 5 and is very spiritual, he also is a very physical being when he lets himself.
And very man. You need a very strong man.
I do. He's a strong
You're so strong.
I need a smart one and a strong one.
Yeah, you need both those things.
I do.
A spiritual and a physical man. Oh, that's great. So let's start with the questions. What we have done this time in this podcast is that I actually asked Susan first, what are we going to talk about? So it's more, this is a podcast where we have a little bit more structure than I usually have, because usually I just let people talk. But since you have so much to talk about, we need to structure a little bit. So what we have done, we talked about this in the beginning, and then we have structured about 4 or 5 questions, and here comes the first one. Okay. So how have you developed yourself and the work? How did you develop yourself?
Well, it actually starts when I blew up my life. So I believed in sort of the fairy tale myth that I would fall in love and live happily ever after. And that did not work the first couple times I tried it. And actually the second time I completely blew up my life because I knew something was fundamentally wrong. I had a very powerful feeling when I was 10 years old once that I had a powerful purpose ahead of me. And in my mid-30s, I realized I was so far from my connection to my purpose, to my wholeness, that I could only destroy what I had created so far.
Oh.
So I destroyed my life.
You did?
Yeah, I did. And then I had to rebuild.
Yeah.
And I found, when my natural energy was identified, I found a connection to my purpose as my soul purpose. I knew that I was here to come here to talk about, to explain, to help others understand how different we are as human beings and how important it is to find yourself in this process. And how helpful that understanding, that the context of the 9 energies was for that.
Well, that's beautiful. But how have you developed yourself to see what you see?
The place I started was, what is 6? What is Susan the 6? What is her purpose? Who am I? What is the power? I found my way into my power, and that was so freeing. So I think that finding the power of your natural energy, to feeling it in your physiology, in your body, and then being able to activate it personally. Okay, so that's the first step for me, was to really dig deep into what is 6 and what is its purpose. Because that was really unclear to me in the beginning. In fact, it took almost 8 or 9 years for me to get a sense of what do I do as a 6-4 community for myself.
For the world.
Yeah, for the world, exactly. What's my role in the 9?
So that's kind of step 1.
Step 1. Then I learned to activate all 9 energies. We had a community and we worked together to support each other. You were part of that.
I was, yeah.
And I learned how to use the specific muscles and bones associated with each of the natural energies. So the centers are all in our body, right? There are 3 in the head, 3 in the chest, and 3 in the torso. And each one uses a very specific set of bones and muscles. At that time, I did not know that's what I was doing. I only knew that I was trying to create some sort of activation in my body that changed the expression on my face. That's all I thought I was doing.
Yeah.
So it was this baby awareness of, well, what's it like to activate another energy?
I understand. So how I understand this story, and I know it very well, you have been in that community, and then you started to work by yourself together with Morten.
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, we decided to go to Burning Man, which is a festival in the desert that's held every year. And it's a festival about authenticity, being yourself. It's about bringing your gift very powerfully to the world.
Where is it?
It's in Nevada, outside of Reno.
Okay.
And I have a 7 friend who had been on me for years to go to Burning Man because she knew that it was going to be important for me somehow. And I was scared to death. Scared to death. I had avoided it for literally about 8 years. But Morten agreed to go with me. And so I knew that I'd be safe and cared for, and the details would be handled, because I don't handle those things very well.
Okay.
So he prepped the RV and got it all ready, and we had 2 Natural Energy 4s, friends of ours, that went with us in this little tiny RV. So Morten, me, and these 2 beautiful 4 women. Of course, I'm very insecure about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Very insecure about Morten being willing to stay with me with all of this magical stuff at Burning Man.
Yeah.
And so that was my big fear, is that, oh, Morten will disappear, right? And so we get to Burning Man, and we had decided that a gift we would give would be to identify people's natural energies.
Okay.
And at the time, I'd never really gone off. Well, actually, we hadn't really made that decision, but the whole drive out there, these 2 4s kept asking me questions about, Susan, why are you not being who you came here to be? Why are you not being authentic? Do you know that you can do this? Yes, I know that I can do this. Then why are you not doing it? So the 4-hour drive to Burning Man, they forwarded me. It's like, you have to be you, Susan. And that was so powerful. So when I got to Burning Man, Morten and I just decided,
So you didn't plan that before?
I wanted to.
You wanted
but
to.
I had to get brave, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a vulnerable thing. Because you don't want to be wrong when you identify somebody.
Yeah.
And
so it's about that. You don't want to be wrong.
Right, because you don't want to, tell somebody that they have to take on faith that they don't know in the realness of their body.
Yeah.
But the first person who came along was this guy on a bicycle with a cast on his leg at Burning Man, when Burning Man is extraordinarily dusty. I was like, oh my God, I looked at him and said, I'm so sorry, what happened? And he had a skydiving accident, but he came into our tent, and he sat there with my 7 friend and I, and we had a long conversation with him. And then I asked him, I said, would you like to know your superpower? And he's like...
You called it superpower?
At the time, I called it your superpower.
Nice.
I just started that at Burning Man's kind of worked there in that context. And he let me... He was actually injured, so he couldn't stand. But I had spent enough time with him, and I had seen him close his eyes and drop inside. And I had seen how he sat in his chair all kind of C-shaped. And he had this warmth, and he was like my best friend, and I just met the guy randomly off the street. And so I became more and more comfortable that what he was manifesting in his body was very likely natural energy force. So I asked him if he wanted to know. And so I sidled over nice and close, and I held his hands, and we closed our eyes together. And this feeling comes over you when you do natural energy 4 with a person who is a 4, that like they put you in their bubble. So this feeling of warmth and deep connection with them that is deeply intimate but not personal. He knew nothing about me. I knew a little bit about him because he'd been talking about himself. But it was so cool. So I told him about 4, what it's like to be a 4. And I realized at that moment that, oh, this is really important. People need to know this about themselves. Because as it was for me, it was for him. That it validated something he'd known about himself and then no longer trusted.
So that was the beginning.
That was, and that year...
The Burning One was kind of firing it up.
It was an amazing testing ground and research ground.
So you worked the first, I know we have been there many times, so the first time you worked with about...
54 people.
Oh, that's so cute.
And we were just beaming about it on the way home.
Yeah.
And I think we did fairly well. You know, our identification rate was fairly good, I think.
So if you go into this detailed question that we are digging into now, so what did you start to see at that time?
My first Burning Man, I realized that I had to not have any preconceived notions or
I have
any...
to explain that word because there is some people...
Preconceived notions. Things that I was thinking were true beforehand. So going in with an idea of what was true.
Oh.
And also being attached to the way I was taught to do it. Oh. I realized that I had to come up with a whole new Susan way of doing this. My 7s were very clear with me that if I'm going to just recite what I heard, it doesn't land. What I say to a person has to be true in this moment personally with you. Oh. If it isn't, you're going to just think I'm full of bunk.
Oh.
I learned that the first year.
Yeah.
And then I was doing 2 with this 2. Okay, and 2 was the one I think I was taught in the most creepiest of ways. And we just didn't really understand it at all in the beginning. Yeah. And I was doing it, and that's what he said to me. He said, Susan, can I give you some feedback? I'm like, yes, please. I don't, you know, I was such a baby in this process. And he says to me, that was a bit creepy. And I said, really? Why was that creepy? You know, how was that creepy? Well, he said, you just plastered a smile on your face and open your eyes, and you just never change the expression on your face. So I thought 2 was, you know, expanding my upper rectus abdominis muscles, which it is, but then it's about me being with you and adjusting to you in the moment. Yeah. And I made absolutely no adjustments. He was very nice because he made all the adjustments, and I think I got them right. But I learned from him that we have to actually be natural, who we are. Yeah. Show up as who we are, which is one of the things we learn from 2, and adjust. Yeah. Because I held that position and that way of being, which is what I thought I needed to do 2. You don't do 2, you engage with other. Yeah. And so I started, so the first year I started to realize everything I did not know. The holes were huge. And I said, well, okay, but what we got out of it, Morten and I, was that we were called to do this work. Yeah.
How was it to have Morten there and in this new discovery?
It was the best because he didn't separate from me. In fact, he moved closer to me. Yeah. And we aligned around the purpose of teaching this work and researching this work and understanding it and figuring out why it mattered.
We actually get closer.
We got a lot closer to ourselves, to each other, and to doing this work. Our commitment came.
Almost, no, he's not crying, but he's behind the camera, but I can see that he likes it.
Yes. Yeah, it was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
So that's the first year. And then?
Well, we went back again, and we did double the number of people.
Okay, so now you're 108.
108, and I came home, I was very tired. And we, over the course of the year in between, we also did a bunch of having people come over to our house and identifying. We got very active with the high school community, because I had kids in high school.
Here in Bosnia?
No, that was in Novado.
Oh, in Novado.
Yeah,
okay,
before
okay.
we did, were the 3 years before we came here and doing all this work. And when we went back to Burning Man that second year, we did it in a different camp. And so we had our own Nine Energies identity. I spoke at Center Camp on the spoken word stage, and we were in the book as Nine Energies. So we started to have a presence that was a little official at Burning Man that year.
Okay.
And learned a lot more. Go back to the memories of that year. What I learned that year was I needed to be able to expand my capacity to be with others. There were a lot of threes that year.
We have to say that one more time, because that's really landed for all of us who's listening to this.
Our human capacity to be with each other is limited.
Oh.
And it's to expand your capacity to be with people of each of the natural energies. Each of them is so different. So you have to actually move in a new space. And if you can't take in what is happening in that new space, it can become very overwhelming and exhausting. So at Burning Man, I learned to expand my capacity so I could identify. Ultimately, my biggest day was 120 people in a day. That's a lot of people to identify. And that didn't actually happen until my third or fourth year at Burning Man. I wasn't able to do that many people in a day. But at the end, we had developed a reputation at Burning Man. We would have one person from one camp come, and then they'd bring everybody from their camp. So the last 2 years, we did over 900 people in 9 days.
So you became attractive in a way.
We did. And we're still very connected to that community.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide community. That was beautiful research base. We learned that natural energy crosses race, culture, male, female. It's a huge connector. If you have a shared natural energy with somebody, you have so much in common with them.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you have no idea where they live and what they care about until you actually learn this in your own body. So I learned at Burning Man also the specificity of the physicality.
That's super nice, and I think we should dig into that.
Well, if you're identifying 100 people in a day, you're going to see at least 10 of every natural energy, or most of them. We tended to have a lot more 1s, 4s, and 3s at Burning Man. So I got deeper into those energies. So maybe one day I remember one day I had about 15 4s come through, mostly female. And that's when I realized that female 4s have relatively narrow shoulders, wider hips. They have a gentle forward movement with the lower hip. They have very warm, inviting eyes. They're totally okay if you get very close to them right away. They want you to be close to them. Because it's in that closeness that we can build an intimate relationship. We have to actually get into each other's physical bubbles. And this was totally okay. These women, one after the other, and they were beautiful, warm, rich relationships that I built with every one of them in about 4 minutes. It was amazing. It was amazing.
That's an interesting detail. So that's what you started to see.
I actually started to see the energy of 4. What it looks like in the body. So you look at my body, you actually can see the energy of 6 in my body. The way the chest is lifted, the jowly quality in my face, and the energetic quality that I bring to life. Well, 4 has its own set of markers, as all of the natural energies do.
So there are markers.
Physical markers. Lots of very specific physical characteristics and energetic characteristics
which
that are
gives
specific.
You information.
Yes. Well, that's how I tell.
That's how you tell.
That's how I tell a natural energy of somebody.
So this is how you can see things that others can't see before they have been in training and done this.
Yeah, it was that repetition at Burning Man that allowed me to say, oh my God, every single 4 had this. Every single 3 had this.
This is such a rich podcast again, okay? So I think we need to decide if we're going to continue with the questions and wait a little bit with them and then dig into all 9, what you see that people usually not see. So you started with, you talked about 4.
I had a lot of 4s one year. I also had a lot of 3s.
Yeah.
So 3s I realized generally are really lean and straight in their bodies. They have this high collarbone, a collarbone that actually pokes out here. This longer face. Well, look at the camera here. Yeah. Nice. And round eyes when they're neutral. Yeah. And then when they engage, this goes up, this comes down, this goes up. And the eyes start to sparkle. And then you can't help but smile. It's the connection, the soul lights up.
So you started to see that, feel that.
Yeah. So
did you touch them or did
Oh yeah.
So you ask for permission, can I touch your...
Can I feel your collarbone? So if I think somebody's a 3, I always ask, and I look specifically for this protrusion right here in the front.
Wow.
It sticks out. So the top vertebrae comes from T1, goes underneath the clavicle right here, and connects to the manubrium. So the 3 is lifting there all their lives. I don't know if it's born in the 3. I haven't seen enough 3 babies to know if they already have the protruding collarbone or if that's something that develops physiologically with all of that lifting that happens in the body of 3.
Wow.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And 3s have this incredible capacity to elicit through a detailed focus, to elicit a felt sense of what's going to manifest.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I agree.
It was amazing.
Yeah. It's just amazing.
It's amazing what 3 can do.
Yeah.
And I am always really grateful for that experience. Yeah.
So, and you have been in Burning Man with Martin. This is 2nd, 3rd year.
Yeah. Well, actually, the 2nd year was the big 3 year.
Yeah.
Lots and lots and lots of 3s.
So then we've been talking about 4 and we've been talking about 3.
Yeah. And the last year we went, I did 900 and some people. And
how many years?
910, give or take.
You have to go back to hear how it was on your body to do all that.
That's exhausting.
Okay.
And I did over 125 ones. And 85 of them were men.
Really?
85 male ones. And
what kind of impact did it have on you?
Well, I got so deeply into the space of 1 that I started to feel like I was a 1. It was the first time I really had this deeper compassion for where 1s actually live and the challenge of having this ability to take people into this space of perfection and then have to live in the space of humanity, which is so far from the state of perfection. Yet it's there in everything. And I learned to see that perfection and to float in a state of sources, I like to call it. So you get a really deep 1 connection. You are feeling them at this beautiful level. And there's no judgment in that connection. But our souls are infinite in that infinite space, and all the incarnations of us and who we are or been come into the space. It's a beautiful thing. Wow. So our deepest, most source-filled being shows up. And
how is their bodies?
How are their bodies?
Yeah.
Well, from here down, variations. Typically, they're beautiful people. They really pay a lot of attention to understand what it is to create beauty and why it's important to create beauty, because we are attracted to beauty. Yeah. So they work very hard on being very beautiful, and I have yet to run into one that's not very beautiful. They have typically longer necks, so it's this stretching of the back of the neck, the raising of the chin. It comes a little forward, so that there's an activation in the throat, the muscles of the throat. And I realize if you touch a 1 right there, there's a tautness that naturally happens. I also learned that if your chin is down, your eyes are more open and more round. So oftentimes 1s, if they don't want to connect with you, when they bring their chin up, they will actually keep their eyes round. And then you have to enable them to soften. But if you create the relationship, the eyes naturally go to about half mast. So that creates a more receptive connection. So I learned how to create that receptive connection and how to stay there long enough.
So that's important. You stay there long enough.
Long enough without breaking eye contact, without blinking.
Oh.
You have to just stay with them, and it takes a full minute to really get into that state of floating source, and you have to be willing to let yourself be seen.
Interesting.
If you're not willing to let yourself be seen, you'll never experience that. So you'll have to allow yourself
Super interesting details.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the whole way home, I was really questioning my value as a human being. It was just like, oh my God. Because when you're rubbing up against source, it's hard to say I'm perfect.
Yeah.
But we are perfect just as we are, which is what you feel when you're in a deep connection with the one. It's like, oh yeah, we're perfect, it's beautiful, you're so beautiful, it's so nice, I love you, it's just lovely, right? And then, you know, then you go back to your, like, I'm separate from you place, and then we're lonely.
So you talked about 4, 3, 1. What happened then? We are into your details of development of Susan Fisher and the work together with Morten Fisher.
Well, at every Burning Man, we did close to 100 of every natural energy, 80 to 100, which is a lot of any of them.
Yeah.
So I really started to see the differences in how the bodies develop. So for example, 6s really do have a bigger rib cage. They have a physically bigger rib cage. Over the course of life, if a 6 doesn't practice that lift and they allow themselves to collapse, it's almost like they're in a state of anxiety. So I learned to look for, can they lift? Can they do that lift?
So lift, yeah.
Yeah. And even you're not doing it still. You're still bringing your shoulder blades back.
Yeah.
I don't bring my shoulder blades to create that lift. I just lift. Boom.
Boom.
This goes up.
Boom.
Yeah, it's good. It's better. Because it's from here.
Boom.
Yeah, it's good.
Boom.
And that's what you have to do to activate 6. You have to expand the intercostal muscles in between the ribs and create a drum-like structure, which expands the chest, especially over the course of our lives. You know, the older you are, the bigger and more expanded your chest can get.
This was very important for your work to start to understand this.
It's critical.
It was critical.
You can't identify if you don't know the physical markers and the differences, because they're very distinct. That big chest of 6 is just as distinct as this collarbone thing is. So there's in the body, there's the physicality, and then the face has very specific physical markers as well.
So 4, 3, 1, 6. Let's go to the next. Into the details of what you see that not most people don't see.
So, well, let's see. We left 2. So 2, I started to learn about how they engage, just because it's nice.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, to be together.
And their bodies?
They have this amazing shimmy ability. So the upper rectus abdominis muscles expand out and become taut. Oh. And their bottom rib cage can slide across in a shimmy-like motion. So they have flexibility right underneath the rib cage that the rest of us don't really have. They have 2 sort of versions of their face. They have a neutral face that has very even space around the forehead, the side of the beside the eyes, around the chin, and I call it sometimes a lion face.
Yeah, that's what I was supposed to ask about. Yeah.
They have this, and the neutral face doesn't have any weird expressions on it. We, the rest of us, the other 8, always have some sort of weird expression on our face. So, we're cocking an eyebrow, we're smirking, we're doing things with our faces.
Neutral.
Super neutral. 9s can have super neutral faces as well, but they also don't have an engaged face. As it turns out, the 9 neutral face is actually their facial expression of activation. Whereas 2 has a neutral face where they're waiting and as an invitation to engage.
So you started to see this.
I did. I started to see the difference between the neutral face and the engaged face. So when they engage, the cheeks come up like chipmunk cheeks.